Can you imagine spending $1,000 on a PSA 10 of a player based solely on the fact that he's incredibly athletic, only to see that card plummet to $1? Or worse, how about spending $100,000 on a hype train quarterback who's benched on an unraveling football team? Darkness has fallen upon the land of the PSA 10s. Let's data dive. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Data Dive powered by Market Movers. My name is Tyler Nethercott, better known as Teapot, and after a nice Thanksgiving week with a nice long weekend, and after having shared some of my favorite PC cards with all of you, I thought a nice sobering dose of cold hard yikes might be in order. See, as much as I love talking about awesome cards as well as speculating on which ones might go up next, the reality is that the vast majority of cards from the time they are released will go down in value. And while PSA 10s are considered the cream of the crop, they are definitely not immune from incredible deterioration. So just a bit of another eye-opening exercise here. I want to present some macro trends as well as some specific card examples to demonstrate the undeniable nature of the modern sports card paradigm. And as always, this video is brought to you by Market Movers with plenty of PSA 10s, but also plenty of other grades and raw cards as well. Visit marketmoversapp.com and use promo code DIVE when you check out. You get 14 days, that's 2 weeks, completely free to try out Market Movers, and then 20% off for life as long as you're subscribed. Now let's get into the data. All right, so we're gonna take like 3 looks here. First, some philosophical clarifications. Then we're gonna take a macro look at some sports card trends, and then we'll look at some specific examples. So starting out, over on my Instagram channel, occasionally bigger picture stuff comes to mind. Ideas, thoughts, observations, and reactions. And what is social media if not a bunch of people thinking that their opinion matters about everything? I'm not immune to this, but I see a lot of things and it just gets my wheels turning. I'm kind of a big thinker, a deep thinker. And I've posted in my stories, and then I've stored them in the, I don't know what you call them, I forget, the highlights on your Instagram account, what I've called these hobby truths. They've running from 1 to like 19 or 20 now. So you can review those if you'd like to. Some things that are a little bit of food for thought, and I've talked about some of them on podcasts. There's 2 here related to each other that I think are really important to open this episode with. And first, hobby truth number 8. It's true that record sales are promoted regularly by businesses and influencers, but every time a card plummets in value and has a massive crash, there are just as many people or more celebrating it and ridiculing the fools who bought high. These posts are made under the guise of caring about some unnamed underdog who might otherwise be taken advantage of, but without consideration for the people who actually lost money. It's often a veiled, shameless self-promotion by hobby Gnostics who claim to have superior knowledge of the way things should be and who feel better about themselves for pointing out someone else's mistakes. There are some content creators who have even shifted their content to almost entirely highlighting record losses. There are others who have done very well for themselves selling iconic cards while they laugh at others who didn't make the same plays. Empathy matters. I plan to be better with this and to encourage others to do the same. That's definitely what I want the theme of this video to be. Related to that, hobby truth number 9. Empathy does matter, but so does personal ownership. If you make a bad play and you lose money, own it. If you listened to somebody else's recommendation, it doesn't matter. You bought the card, you made it, nobody made you buy it. Nobody forced you. Own it as the price of tuition and learn from it. I've done that. I'm sure many of you have done that. And let's stop the virtue signaling like we're out to help everybody else by pontificating about what is or isn't a good buy. Have integrity and share information. And as Dale Carnegie said, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. There's a lot there. And I understand even reading through some of that stuff, some of you might say, well, that seems a bit hypocritical or double standard or whatever with some of the videos that I do. My goal is to educate. I'm trying to educate. I'm trying to engage with many of you too. I do like reading through the comments. I love getting messages on Instagram with thoughts, and that's kind of the participation. This is supposed to be a community aspect, but there are definitely aspects of the hobby that make you scratch your head, and I think a lot of them are based on naivety or just sort of a prevailing theme or trend that carries for a time but has a lot of risk with it. And I don't like seeing people get burned. So my preference would be that people don't pump excessive amounts of money into cards with prices that are unsustainable in the bigger grand scheme of things. And that's, shameless promotion here. That's where I think a product like Market Movers is so valuable. You can look at the current prices of some of these big cards, but then you can also very easily contextualize those card prices vis-a-vis other similar cards from all eras, from sports, and be like, why would this card of Cade Cunningham be more expensive than something like this card of Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant? Some of those things will make you scratch your head. So I want to kind of get into some of this, and I want to shift gears into a chart and some, kind of an example that I've shown. I've used this time and time again, periodically on this channel, and it's looking at kind of what the price trajectory is for rookie cards when they come out. And I have to really emphasize, this is nothing new. This is not new. This goes all the way back to the 90s, back when I was collecting cards and prior. Really, the emergence of the rookie card in the 80s up until now, it's just that it's intensified now. The price point spike much higher now. So I'll walk you through this, and then I'll show you a chart. So we've got like year trajectories here in the rows, right? Year 0, that would be rookie year, 1, 2, 3, 4, how many years into the league somebody is. And then these are their possible trajectories. So in this case, we're assuming this is like a high draft pick, let's say a lottery pick or a top 3 pick in either football, basketball, whatever. Somebody that's got a lot of hype and is expected to be really good, and whose price point when it comes out of the gate is front loaded with all kinds of expectation, which the player may or may not eventually realize. So they could be a generational talent, which is what we're all obviously hoping for when we buy cards of players early. Superstar, star players, and maybe think all-star level, right? Role players, and then a bust, the dreaded bust. So in all these cases, the player is starting out at $2,000. I'm just using like a mock number, a mock card, pick whatever you want, $2,000, right? Year 1, in almost every case, every one of these players comes out. Even if they're playing like a generational talent, their cards will almost always go down in value after year 1. There are countless examples of this. I could go through all that data and spend an entire episode on that. I think of a player like Julio Rodriguez, who had a great rookie year, wins Rookie of the Year, and his card prices, he had another good year this year, little slow early, and then turns it on. His card prices are down significantly. So many players are like that. They come out hot, they play really well, and their prices still go down, which is why you see $1,700 if they play like somebody who looks like they could be a generational talent or a superstar. If they're not showing those signs really, really early, take a player like Brandon Miller right now for the Hornets. I think he's averaging 14, 15 points a game. He's playing pretty well as rookies go, in my opinion. Like, we've seen some crazy rookie breakouts in recent years, but that's a pretty solid rookie campaign so far. It's early, but I still would expect his prices to come out hot, and then if he just maintains that, they're going to go down. Role players, even worse, a bust, they're going to come down hard and fast because people are going to be like, wow, this player, Scoot Henderson, isn't who I thought he was. Projecting forward, then, you see these sort of trajectories where maybe that generational talent starts to turn the corner. You're sorting the wheat from the chaff. You're sifting through good players and bad players, and you kind of go on this trajectory. So this is kind of what I would compare. It's a bad example in a way, but Giannis, a player like Giannis, now he wasn't considered to be a generational talent. He was a guy nobody had ever heard of with like raw potential, but he's kind of followed this price trajectory and his prices have gone up a lot. Patrick Mahomes, maybe the obvious guys in this category. Ronald Acuna Jr., even though his prices didn't really go up this year, everybody had high hopes for him early on. So what does that chart look like? Well, that chart looks like basically only one scenario, literally only one scenario where buying a player's cards early in their career, within the first year of their career, actually pays off with 6, 7 plus years into their career where their prices are actually going to go up. In all other cases, I would argue their cards are coming down in price. And again, there's definitely data to substantiate this at this point, even within market movers. So take that generational talent out, which is skewing that chart, and just look at those other 4 scenarios of superstar, star, role player, and bust. And in 3 of those, you're losing money. And on the superstar, there might be a window where their prices go up, but then as their career settles in, as they're into those later stages, if they were a hyped player early, at best I feel like you're just kind of breaking even. And I think that's really true for many cases. Can you find exceptions to this? Sure. But as a prevailing theme, that's sort of the dynamic, and I think that's what's so dangerous. And I think that's what a lot of people don't really realize. Now, we can distinguish speculation and the game that all of us like to play, the competition of basically me versus you. I've got more insight, I've got a hunch, and it's it's kind of whatever that paradigm is. The bigger fool, right? You're trying to find like the bigger fool. I mean, that sounds really pejorative. Maybe it is, but like it or not, that's the dynamic within the speculation game. The long-term investment piece is a much different paradigm, and I think that that's one that not a lot of people are thinking about, and how that impacts the hobby overall and people staying within it. So let's shift gears, and I'm still looking at some kind of like big data, bigger data trends, some macro trends here. Maybe you knew this, maybe you didn't, but in Market Movers, we do track different rookie indexes. So we've got like 2019, and we use Prism because there's transaction volume. You can set up higher end indexes too, and we've done that with certain players. But in this case, it helps to kind of see what these cards are doing over time. And I'm looking at 2019, 18, 17, and 16 Prism basketball indexes. So you can scroll down, and you'll see these are like the Prism Silver PSA 10s. So they have some, pop count to them, that type of a thing, right? As I scroll down, this is the 2019 index. You can see these are PSA 10s, PSA 10 silvers. And Eric Pascal, 99 cents. Jared Culver, $1.25. Tremont Waters, $2. Chumo Kiki, $2.25. Dumbuya, $2.51, right? Let me click on this Sekou, because this was my guy way back when, and go to all data. This card was topping out, on average, 21 sales back from this period that it's measuring, $419 on average. The card's now $2. That's painful. And that's not a one-off. That is like the vast majority of cards. Now, some of that has to do with the period that was jet fueled during COVID and when the hobby really saw that crazy unsustainable boom. But look at these indexes and what their performance has been. I'm actually going to shift. Let me go to all data. And what we'll see is that the data is pretty troubling. Down 81.4% since we started tracking the data for this index. 74%, 68%, 78%. And so what happens is the vast majority of these players, as they can't possibly live up to the expectation of all being generational talents or all even being superstars, most, if not all of them, other than 1 to 2 players, come down, 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 and they go hard after people sort of give up on them in year 3 or 4, and maybe that one player is still going up. Maybe, if you're lucky, if that player happens to be in that draft class. We can see the same thing here. Let me switch to all data. This is football. So what we can see is 73%, 78%, 35% on 2018, which is interesting, and 53%. So not as bad, here. That's Josh Allen, that's Lamar Jackson. So that's not as bad as some of them, but that's actually also not tracking data quite as far back, probably because we were adding in some additional rookies to sort of round out that index, so that data is not going back quite as far as some of these other ones. So what if we look at price movements? We switch over to price movements, and what I've done here is I just put in basketball, football, PSA 10, a few different sets, some of the silvers, and I've got a max price on these cards that I set of $20, okay? And I scroll down. I've got 3 pages at 80 cards per page that have sold in the last 90 days of rookie cards from these years, from these sports, and this particular parallel, all basically the cost of grading or less. And you can go through this list. You see some of the usual suspects here, KJ Hamler, Landry Shamet, Nasir Little, Culver, like so many of the players. If you were to go through and look at these draft classes and look at the players that were the most hyped, you will see that their cards have come down significantly. Look at Mo Bamba. Remember, he had a lot of hype behind him. Let's pop this open and go all data and see. This was a crazy sale. We review these for exceptions to see if any of these cards are outliers, but you can see there was definitely a trend of his card, around $150, $160, and now that card has come down. Most recently had a sale for $3.26 in a PSA 10. So shift over. Let's take a look, for example, at some baseball cards here. I put in a bunch of the kind of key sets for rookie cards and prospect firsts, PSA 10s from $1 to $20, and scroll down. You can see, look at how many pages, 17 pages. Now I didn't specify the variation here, but that's what I'm kind of trying to demonstrate. And this isn't a specific variation. That's just all the cards that we have in Market Movers in here. Brandon Lowe. I always mix up Nate. I think it's Lau in this case. This card was up here, $90, and this trajectory is all the way down. I remember when I was buying these raw thinking like, okay, he's pretty good. $1.25, for his PSA 10 Topps Chrome base card. And again, you can just scroll through this list. This isn't meant to be negative. It's just very sobering to go through some of these examples. You can see the same thing here in hockey. I know hockey doesn't get enough love on this channel. It's not my expertise, but we do have the data for it. And you can see, unfortunately, I see a lot of Red Wings when I go through this data. They're turning it around, I hope, under Steve Yzerman's management. But you see a lot of those guys on here, $5.50. And you can scroll through this. This is a lot of the young guns, right? And certain other sets. But these are all the rookie cards in PSA 10. And I did the same thing and looked at, cards under 20 bucks. You're looking at maybe 150 different players and different cards who have sort of come down into that price threshold. So what if we look at some specific cards to sort of close this out, really hammer home this point? Darius Bailey. For those of you who were collecting back in 2019 and 2020, when Prism came out, you remember, first of all, you couldn't find the product in retail on shelves. Back then, there was no Prism. Now it's gone back to the other extreme where the blasters are 35 bucks and they're at every single shop just sitting on the shelves because there's not a lot of good stuff you can get out of the retail products. Back then, you could get some pretty decent things, and back then, even base cards and especially silvers and the orange ice were all super popular. Darius Bailey was incredibly hyped, and I remember being on our Sports Card Investor Discord and having, let's call it, passionate discourses with people, like sort of saying, my opinion is pump the brakes on this guy. He hasn't done anything. And everybody's, look at how athletic and long and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, do you remember Tyrese Thomas? Like, everybody said the same thing about him. He didn't pan out. There's plenty of athletic guys in the NBA who don't ever do anything. And I just didn't see the upside on his cards. Now, if we scroll down, this is the all data chart. You can see that as an average sale, this card topped out at $680. And as a low sale, 99 cents for this PSA 10. And if I scroll down, I'm going to go to completed sales here, and I'm going to sort this by the lowest price. You can see 99 cents, $2, $2.25. Now, this is a sale from back then. I remember this sale because Parker, my data guy, were looking at this saying, like, should we remove this? It looks kind of funky. Maybe it wasn't a real sale. Like I said, when there's not proof that something isn't real, we leave it in the data. So $1,000, maybe this was, was paid for, maybe it wasn't. $800, similar scenario. But in any case, you can see that in this period, in December of 2020, Darius Bailey cards were going for crazy prices. And they've literally come down to next to nothing. And there's, other examples of that. Let's jump over. Let's look at a couple other guys. I mentioned this guy earlier. Kevin Porter Jr. and then Sekou Doumbouya, the guy who never worked out, the guy who was supposed to be the Pistons' Giannis and never even really played. These cards, the high points, $1,800, $1,850, almost $1,600. Now most recently down to $78 and $36. And I would expect with KPJ's troubles off the court that this card comes crashing down even more significantly. Maybe there's a handful of people still looking to collect his cards, but this is when I'd be selling, not dissimilar to Wander Franco and other cards. And this Sekou, I'm honestly surprised to see this, but there are still Pistons people who like to go after nice cards, especially when they're discounted this significantly, down to 36 bucks for a Tiger Prism. So that's really troubling. Michael Porter Jr., an active player, everybody said he's got, again, the length, he can shoot the ball, he's got all these, things, but then he had the back problems and the injury problems. And now this year, I was expecting to see him take another step forward. He really hasn't done that so far. I think he's kind of settling into being a known commodity of a guy who can spot up from the outside, basically an extra lengthy Kyle Korver type player, and that's about what you're going to get from MPJ. This card once sold for $6,000. $6,000, now down to $385 for his blue ice to 99 PSA 10. Ansu Fati, soccer. This is a guy who had a ton of hype, but has also had major injury problems and whose career, looks like it might be fizzling. This is Mega Cracks, PSA 10, Pop 121. Saw a high sale of $5,100. You can see back here it was averaging, well over 4K, really. Most recently sold on November 15. PSA 10, $141. And then let's look at one more chart of some football players. Sam Darnold, his gold kaboom. This card sold for $10,300. most recently $909. And this is an insert set that people like to chase, almost player agnostic. Like they want the insert set, they want the runs, they want the golds, which is why I think it's still holding this kind of a value. That's a 91% decrease in price. It's over $9,000 in loss on that card. Trey Lance, another modern quarterback who hasn't worked out. This card was at nearly $3K, now down to $221 for his downtown. And who can forget Mac Jones? I can't leave the video without Mac Jones. $9,000 down to $323, a loss of 96.4%. And never forget Mac Jones, this ridiculous run of this Donruss card. I use this as the poster child for don't get sucked into bad trends. Two average sales, supposedly of $2,500 when the first PSA 10s hit the market of a Donruss base paper card. Some of these certainly sold at these price points, and even if you were to take that first part off and see average sales of $400, knowing that this card has now sold at a low recently of $5.50, that's pretty brutal, especially when you're looking at a Donruss base paper. All right, so that's a lot, and I can't reiterate enough that I'm not trying to bash anyone who has bought in high. I'm not trying to be overly critical, and I'm not trying to be a doomsday prophet. I'm describing the overall paradigm of the modern sports card hobby, and this is frankly nothing new, except insofar as the dollar amounts are bigger than they really ever have been. So what do you think of all of this? Please let me know down in the comments. And while you're down there, do me a huge favor, like this video, make sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, happy investing, keep on collecting, and make sure to have fun.